Welcome all to this webinar of the IPMA Special Interest Group on Business Agility. This is the third session we're having on business agility. The first one was on business agility in general. The second one, we had Laurens Bonnema talking about inspiring project management with Agile. And this session will be with Richard Campbell and Andrew Craddock from the Agile Business Consortium, also talking about Agile project management, Agile PM. The IPMA SIGs are special interest groups where experts get together and discuss certain topics, and they also allow other people to join sessions when they have sessions. So welcome to all the participants. This will be recorded, but the participants will not be visible. And if you have any questions, then I would invite you to type them into the Q&A, and I will then take them up and discuss them with Richard and Andrew. So if there's any questions, pick them up, push them into Q&A, and we will then discuss them. If you close down Zoom, there will be a questionnaire, a satisfaction survey to assess how you were doing and how you find this. Let me just check my notes if there's anything else I need to. Oh, of course. My name is Peter Koesmans. I'm also from the Agile Business Consortium. I'm the Chief Agility Officer. And actually, the Special Interest Group is a special one because it's organized by IPMA in collaboration with the Agile Business Consortium. Now, if all of you are set to go, then I would like to hand over to Andrew and Richard. Please introduce yourselves and tell us what you're going to tell us.
Thanks, Peter. Hello, everyone. I'm Richard Campbell from the Agile Business Consortium. I'm not going to be doing much of the speaking here because I'm honoured to be joined by my colleague Andrew Craddock, who is the product architect at the consortium, but really is the brains behind the whole of the Agile PM and specifically the extension with Scrum that we're going to be focusing on here. So I will now stop and hand over to Andrew to allow him to introduce himself and, of course, take you into the main talk. But very happy to take questions in this general area, but I think Andrew's going to be the focus here. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and good afternoon, everybody. I will say one thing, although I've been involved with the Agile Business Consortium and Agile PM and our method for it, it hasn't been just me. So there are lots of people have been involved with this over the years, but it is my pleasure to be presenting it to you today. So I'm going to start off with the definition of business agility. So this is the definition that the Agile Business Consortium have. A people-centered, organization-wide capability that enables a business to deliver value in a world characterized by ever-increasing volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that's achieved by inspiring and harnessing the collaborative, creative ways of working of the organization's people to meet its core purpose. So that's the general definition of business agility. And we're going to focus on projects as a way of delivering some of that. And we're going to start by first exploring a little bit about VUCA. So volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So volatility describes a tendency to change quickly and unpredictably. Uncertainty describes a lack of clarity or precision related to a future state. Complexity describes a whole that's made up of many interrelated parts, and also where the relationship between those parts is not always predictable. And ambiguity, which describes something that can be understood in more than one way. It's an undeniable reality of today's world, and with every month that goes past, we see volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in the environment that we're working in increasing. So what I'm going to be dealing with today really is how projects can be configured to deal with that VUCA world, and that agility is effectively the antidote to VUCA. It's worth defining a little first, differentiating between project management and product development. And I do this because product development really is the main focus of Agile and the roots of Agile from software. So most of agility, when people talk about Agile, they talk about Agile frameworks, Agile methods. They're related primarily to product development, and we're a bit different in our focus because we look at project management rather than just product development. So project management has a wider context than product development, and tends to focus on the coordination of activities beyond pure product development, and also the governance of the way of working of those development and other activities. Product development, in contrast, focuses on bringing a product, a thing, from concept to the point that it can be used to address the needs of its audience. So a product might be a virtual thing or a physical thing. It may be, in a virtual sense, it might be a service rather than a physical product. And a product may also consist of many sub-products. So if you think of a car as a motor car as a product, there will be sub-products within it, such as the engine. That engine might be used just in that vehicle, or it might be used in other motor vehicles from the same manufacturer. So the engine itself is also a product. So that's the relationship between products and sub-products. So in very broad and general terms, the project, the scope of what we mean by projects is focusing on the who, why, when, and where of what we're doing, whereas the product development scope focuses more on the what and how of that product evolution. We have Agile PM that covers the project management aspects, and various ways of covering product development, which do include Scrum, which is the focus of our most recent product, which combines Agile PM and Scrum. So let's have a look a little about project management agility. What is it? How does it differ from more traditional project management? Traditional approaches to project management often, not always, but often focus or often have an assumption of stability. So think, reflecting back to VUCA, one of those, what that represents is a distinct lack of stability in the environment around a project. Traditional approaches often assume stability in both the design of the solution and the problem that is intended to address. Often they're characterized by significant upfront analysis and design, predictive and detailed planning. So those are plans that are formulated and are expected to hold fundamentally true for the duration of the project. And change within that framework tends to be controlled by a regimented change process, change management process, change control process. So suggesting that change is an exception rather than the norm, rather than the thing that you would normally expect as a default. All of that serves to really downplay the reality of VUCA. Yeah, so it's almost as if the project approaches that value those things are designed in a world where VUCA doesn't exist. So agility in project management looks at things in a different way. The assumption of stability isn't valid, is the premise. We see volatility, uncertainty in the problem or the opportunity that we're trying to meet to be inevitable. So inevitable volatility there, which leads to or drives behaviors often around complexity and ambiguity as you're trying to second guess the future to predict what the future is going to be in order to have that illusion perhaps of stability. So we recognize in an agile project environment that VUCA is going to be the major challenge that we have. It's the norm, it's not the exception. So if those are our projects, and up on the screen there you can see all of the things that can impact in a very major way the environment around a project. If we are expecting that, then agility is the best response to use within our project framework. So what are the characteristics of an agile project? How do we tackle this challenge of VUCA? Well, the first thing is we try and leave detail until the last responsible moment, because it is in the detail that we're going to be most susceptible to that volatility and change. Quite often we can have broad objectives for our projects that will remain true from the beginning of the project to the end, even if that spans a number of years, because we know what broadly we're trying to achieve. It's only when we get down into the detail that we're likely to be buffeted by VUCA. Predictions about the near future are more likely to be accurate. So there's a reason to leave detail till the last responsible moment. The further into the future we go, the less likely it is that the detail we define and agree up front is likely to be valid. Also, connected with that, deferring that detailed work means that it only needs to be done once. So rather than defining detail now and then having to deal with that changing over time, we can actually keep things at a high level now and define the detail much closer to the point that it becomes relevant in terms of evolving that element of our project. Associated with that, we reduce the effort associated with maintaining and reapproving documentation. If we keep to a high level and we honor that high level in our achievement and that remains valid, then we don't need to keep changing it. Therefore, we remove this burden of change at the detail level, which is wasteful. It has no real value at all to the outcome and the value delivered by the project. We also have the fact that decisions taken later rather than sooner are going to be better informed by what's been going on around us in our project over that period of time. The final big characteristic of agile projects is we focus on developing and ideally deploying our solutions in an iterative and incremental way. So things are developed iteratively, so that's through cycles of improvement, and deploying it should be incremental. So as soon as value can be achieved from the work we've done on a project, we try and get that out there to our businesses, to our customers, so they can value it and we can start getting return on investment associated with the project. So the big words, going back to the top of the screen there, the big words are about the last responsible moment. And what is the last responsible moment, and defining the last responsible moment, or understanding the last responsible moment for making these detailed decisions is key to tuning agility to your project. As I move forward, it might surprise you to know that I'm not going to be couching this presentation as agile is good and non-agile is bad. Yeah, it is always a spectrum, and what we need to do is we need to find the sweet spot between agility and predictive approaches that work most effectively for our projects. So let's now look a little bit about what agility is and where that came from. So the term agile was coined in 2001 when a number of thought leaders that you can see at the bottom of the screen here got together at a ski resort in Utah for a bit of skiing and thinking about what they were finding effective in terms of building software. That's where it came from, and they came up with this manifesto that 15 years later the Agile Business Consortium has built on a little bit to take us away from software and into the wider realms of solving business problems. So the Agile Business Consortium are building on the manifesto for agile software development by uncovering better ways of developing solutions to business problems and opportunities. Through this work, we continue to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. In other words, the way people and the way people work together is valued more highly than the processes they follow and the tools they use. We value working solutions, and the word in purple, we've changed from working software to working solutions over comprehensive documentation. And the comprehensive documentation referred to here is primarily about the documentation that's created before the project delivery starts. So all this upfront work in terms of design, analysis and design, and the specifications that those manifest in. We value customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And contract negotiation doesn't just mean formalized legal contracts between different parties associated in a project. Even in the simplest sort of project where you might have a specification or whatever that gets signed off by the parties involved with creating it, just signing off a specification is actually a form of contract. And in that contract, you've got the requesters of whatever the solution is acknowledging by signing off that this is a complete and full, accurate account of what we need from this project. And you've got the project participants signing it off to say, we understand that need and the way it's defined, and we can create a solution to meet that need. So it's still a contract, even if it's within an organization. And finally, we value responding to change over following a plan. And that plays back to what I was talking about with VUCA a couple of minutes ago, and the fact that our plans really need to emerge over time as we get to the detail, rather than, and that in itself is responding to the change in the environment, rather than fixing a plan up front and having to change the plan. And then there's a very important last sentence. That's while there's value to the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. So what that says is that processes, tools, documentation, contracts, plans, all of those things have value and will continue to have value. But we need to think about the items on the left more, the individuals and interactions, the working solutions, the customer collaboration, and the responding to change, because it is in harnessing those things that we're better able to deal with VUCA. So I'm now going to look at, in the project context, at Agile with two focuses. The first one is in the overall approach we might take to a project, and the second is related to ways of working. So in terms of the overall approach, if we're in an environment where volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity is high, so where we're expecting lots of impact from VUCA, then it is safer to rely on sort of dynamic, collaborative problem solving amongst the people involved in the project. We're better led by vision and allowing solutions to emerge to meet that vision, and having contracts that support that dynamic, collaborative problem solving and emergent solutions. If we are in a low VUCA environment, so there is a degree of certainty, a good degree of certainty and stability and predictability and all of those good things, then it might be safer to rely on upfront analysis and design, defined specification-led solutions, so we know exactly what we're going to get, and contracts that support that. In those circumstances, our primary focus is likely to be the project plan, and we're likely to be organizing our project with predictive efficiency in stage milestones that based on fulfilling that plan, executing that plan. Yeah, so that's what we would expect where VUCA is low. Where the impact of VUCA is likely to be higher, it's probably better to focus on the business case rather than the plan, and to have that at the forefront of our minds as we go through the project, and to rely on iterative development and incremental delivery of a solution that meets that or fulfills that business case, rather than fulfilling a predictive solution to that business case. So in that spectrum, the dividend we get, the advantage, the value that comes from agility is high, where we have a high risk of VUCA, and lower where we have a high degree of stability and certainty. So the overall approach, where things need to be dynamic, should be agile. Where things are known to be stable, can lean more to the traditional predictive approaches to projects. So that focuses on the overall project approach. Earlier I was saying it's important to tailor the approach to the particular project and the environment you're working in. It's likely to be less efficient to work in a dynamic, agile way for the project overall if things are really fixed and stable. It will be more efficient to work in a predictive way. That doesn't apply, though, when we look at ways of working. So in terms of the way we would work, the way we would collaborate as a wider team in the context of a project is key here. So going back to the manifesto statements, valuing individuals and interactions over processes and tools and so on, the items on the left there really play to the strengths of human beings. Yeah, so over millennia, human beings have evolved as the dominant species on planet Earth, primarily due to two things. One of them is our opposable thumbs, which allow us to use tools. Yeah. The second thing is our ability to collaborate to solve complex problems. Yeah, and if you look at our closest relatives on planet Earth, you look at the great apes, chimpanzees, and orangutans and things like that, you can see that they also are able to collaborate to solve problems and have started using tools to help with that as well. So they're just nowhere near as advanced in those capabilities as human beings are. If you look at the things on the right, processes and tools and contracts and plans and all of that sort of thing, it plays more to the strength of machines. Yeah, and machines are really things created by human beings to do exactly what we want them to do in a predictable and repetitive way. Yeah, that's That's what machines do for us. And if we're going to be working and automating things, we're going to be being very precise and repeatable about what we need. Then we need to have clearly defined processes and tools, not necessarily documentation, but that may well be required as a way of helping us to really achieve that absolute clarity of detail of exactly what we want to happen and to communicate that. And contracts and plans, contracts probably less so, but certainly plans, very predictive, step by step, this is what we would want the machine to do. Certainly, all of those things lean to the things on the right. Something else to bear in mind as we think about ways of working come from the very wise words of Jim Highsmith. So Jim Highsmith is one of the co-authors of the original Agile Manifesto and one of the co-founders of the Agile Alliance, and to this day a thought leader in Agile leadership. And I saw him present this, and it was a fantastic presentation quite a few years ago now. But the key learning from it was that documentation is not the same thing as understanding. Process is not the same thing as discipline, and formality is not the same thing as skill. And if you play that statement to the values above, you see that the documentation, process, and formality is the stuff that leans to the right, and is very often the way projects are set up, and even more often than the way they're set up, the way they are governed. Whereas the understanding, the discipline, and the skill relate more to the things on the left of those value statements. So regardless of what we're doing, and we might be in a really stable, predictable environment for our project. Let's say, you know, we're building a bridge on rocky ground between two rocky outcrops on a river or something like that. So we know we're working in a geologically stable environment as we build our bridge. We know that it's very unlikely that anything in that domain it will change in the span of years or whatever that it's going to take us to build that bridge. That would be an ideal sort of scenario where we're likely to have the sort of highly predictive, detailed planning upfront type approach to our project. But even within that, when it comes to, for example, designing our bridge, we should lean towards the values on the left here. We should work collaboratively with all of those people with the knowledge, skill, thought, creativity, and all of those good things about what's going to make the ideal bridge, so that we can agree a specification for it. Yeah. So the collaborative ways of working that lean to the left of those value statements always have a place to play, regardless of how agile or rigid our overall project approach might be. So what does agility mean? So we talked about where it comes from. We talked about a little about it in a personal context, but how do we bring this into reality? Empiricism underpins agility, and empiricism is based on transparency of what we're doing. So all the people involved in a project trust each other and have the courage to keep each other informed by making visible the work they're doing, the actual state of the work, and having the courage in particular to be honest about what's going badly as well as what's going well. Inspection is the next of the three pillars of empiricism. Inspection of the emergent solution and the way of working, so what we're creating and the way we're working to create it, by everyone involved or impacted by it, allows everyone to consider what is right and good, and perhaps what should be changed moving forward to make the solution better or the way of working better. And making those things better is what adaptation is about. So it's about continuous improvement, the process of adapting through experimentation based on results of the inspection that we've done. So those are the things that underpin agility. And if you look at agile approaches to product development or project management, they should be centered around this notion of transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Now to Agile PM. So Agile PM is the Agile Business Consortium's offering for Agile project management. It's based on DSDM, the Dynamic Systems Development Method, which is was an IT-centric project approach that evolved in the mid-1990s, at around about the same time that Scrum evolved, but completely independently of Scrum. And it's the project manager's perspective on that approach to projects as a whole. As I mentioned, it evolved in the 1990s, and it was the first and only project-centric Agile approach that helped shape the Agile Manifesto. When you go back and look at that slide from earlier, you'll see Arie van Bennekom, Arie van Bennekom's name there. He represented the DSDM consortium, as the Agile Business Consortium was called back in the 1990s, at that gathering of thought leaders in 2001. It's a lightweight project framework that covers both project management and product delivery. So that's what Agile PM does. And as I say, that's based purely on DSDM, the Dynamic Systems Development Method. More recently, we've evolved Agile PM, and going back to what Richard said right at the beginning, I did spend a lot of time on this particular aspect. So what went before was very much a collaborative effort. This has been more focused around some evolution that I've made with feedback from others, including the people on this call, Peter and Richard, as well as other members of the consortium and outside of the consortium. So what that does is it embraces Scrum for product development primarily. So we've taken out the DSDM element of team level working, development team level working, and we've embraced Scrum instead. We did that in a way that remained absolutely true to the Scrum Guide 2020, the latest version of the Scrum Guide, and we customized the Agile PM layer around it to provide that extension and to go to places in terms of developing overall solutions that Scrum just doesn't have any concern with. We did this for two reasons. One is Scrum doesn't have any concern really beyond product development, but it is truly excellent at what it does in terms of product development. So, and is by far the most widely used Agile approach in the world. Most people out there who are practicing agility, particularly in the software space, are using Scrum to do that. So let's look a little at the Agile PM framework. So we have a philosophy that states that best business value emerges when projects are aligned to clear business goals, deliver frequently, and involve the collaboration of motivated and empowered people. That philosophy is supported by a set of 8 principles, which I'll look at very briefly in just a moment, that build the mindset and behaviors necessary to bring that philosophy to life. And those principles are themselves supported by guidance around people, defining roles and responsibilities and ways of working, in terms of process, enabling iterative and incremental delivery, in terms of work products, creating where they add value, the things that help keep us on track and communicate progress on our project, and practices that help to achieve optimum results. And all of this is based on a foundation of common sense and pragmatism. So there you can see the definitions of common sense and pragmatism. And it's really important to emphasize these because the Agile PM approach, the DSTM approach, is not predictive. It doesn't say this is what you must do and how you must do it. It expects you as a project manager to look at the environment, to look at the problem that you're trying to solve, to look at the way that is likely to be solved, and to make adaptations to the DSTM way of working that are sensible and pragmatic and actually focused on helping you achieve what you need to achieve by the end of the project. Yeah, so that's where common sense and pragmatism comes in. We have 8 principles. So focus on the business need, deliver on time, collaborate, the people in the project collaborate with the customer. We never compromise quality, so we clear at the outset what quality we need to achieve, and we fix that, never compromise it. We build incrementally from firm foundations. I'm going to talk a little bit about foundations and what that means in a moment, but essentially it is the upfront work that needs to be done to make a project moving forwards stable. We develop iteratively, we communicate continuously and clearly, and we demonstrate control throughout the project. And ultimately, we demonstrate control by showing how we maintain a focus on the business need, showing that we're delivering on time, showing that we are collaborating, and so on. So the demonstration of control relates to the other 7 principles and should be focused on making those things visible and transparent to others. We also did some enhancements, made some enhancements in Agile PM for Scrum to project leadership. And we're really recognizing that leadership in a project comes from multiple dimensions. You can see on this slide, we talk about the business visionary. So the business visionary should have a real sort of strategic business focus on our project and making sure that what evolves and emerges over the duration of the product meets the business need and delivers business value. We have a solution architect whose responsibility is focused on the integrity and quality of the overall solution, making sure that all the elements of that are being delivered from our project work in harmony with each other. And we've got the project manager who leads the project from the point of view of governance and coordination and resources and budgets and all of that sort of good stuff to make sure that the project runs smoothly. 2 roles, leadership roles introduced by Scrum are the product owner, who's responsible for the evolution of the product, which is the main vehicle for delivery of value, and the Scrum Master, who leads from the point of view of the way of working in the Scrum team, but also in the way that the working of the Scrum team relates to the environment around the Scrum team. And in this case, that includes the project environment. So those are the 5 sort of key leadership roles. And you've got the business sponsor over to the left of the slide there, who is responsible for the overall business outcome and the business case for it, and making sure that what we're investing in our project will pay dividends by the end. And what we did, so those top ones, business visionary, project manager, and the solution architect, previously called the technical coordinator, in Agile PM and DSTM, we're really focused on those different dimensions of the project, and it's about bringing all of those different leadership perspectives together if we're going to have a successful project. Our Scrum Agile PM for Scrum process is shown on this slide. We start with a pre-project phase where we're just shaping up what is this project for, what's it intended to achieve. A feasibility phase that looks at whether the project is likely to fly from a business perspective, but also from a solution perspective. Is there likely to be a solution out there that's going to meet the business need that's been identified? And is it likely to be cost effective to put that solution in place? Very high level, very, very high level view. And what we're looking for at this point is, if we've got a project, the outcome of which is going to generate £1 million or €1 million benefit in a year, year on year, what's it going to cost us to achieve that approximately? And if the answer is, I don't know, something like €500,000 to achieve our project objectives, and we're going to get €1 million benefit every year for it after that, it kind of looks like a sensible thing to spend more time investigating. If we're going to get €1 million benefit every year, but the project's going to cost us €5 million to deliver, maybe we need to look at more detail as to whether that is a cost-effective thing to be doing right now. That's what feasibility does for us. Foundations takes that initial investigation, assuming we get a green light and it is worth looking further at our project. We go to the next level of detail in foundations. We still keep things at a high level, but we get our heads around, okay, so what does this mean? What resources do we need to put in place? How long is this likely to take us? High level, predictive, high level things, but not getting down into the detail of exactly what's going to happen when. Then we drop into, in Agile PM for Scrum terms, we drop into delivery. Then we start delivering our product based on those firm foundations, incremental delivery. And we may have one or more than one Scrum teams, and maybe other teams not using Scrum, and other individuals that are just working alone to contribute value to our overall solution. And then we go into our deployment phase. In the deployment phase, we assemble, review, and hopefully deploy the increment of our overall solution that we've created. Now, it's important to understand that if, for example, the main product we're creating is a software product, that the software, the system, the product that's been created is only part of the picture. If it's a business system, we need to make sure that people understand how to use it. We need to understand the business processes that might need to change in order to have a more efficient way of moving forwards. All of those things are likely to be dealt with by teams other than those building the software. So it's about bringing the assemble bit of the deploy process. It's about bringing all of those elements together and making sure that they're reviewed collectively, and assuming that they are all good and adequate, will then get deployed. At that point, at the review point, there are two possible options. If there's still some weaknesses or things that aren't quite right, we've got the opportunity to follow the orange arrow that you can see on the screen back to say, let's do that little bit more work, fix those final problems, perhaps another sprint to do that, another few weeks to do that, and then we'll come back, assemble and check, etc., and hopefully then deploy that slightly revised solution. The other one is the big grey arrow, and that says, okay, we're now deploying what we've created so far. Now's the time to follow the big grey arrow back to the foundations phase to say, what's the next chunk of value we're going to be working on? And the story doesn't end with deployment. It kind of would for Scrum, because we built the thing and shipped it. It's now out there delivering value. But in a project context, we really need to make sure that what we have delivered embeds, because value is delivered over time from the point that our solution is first delivered. So embedding that and evolving it further, because the world continues to be volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, and we're going to get change and need change to our solution post-deployment. So we need to continue to make sure it's evolved. It evolves as we go. Last thing that I think we've got time for is a very quick look at one of the underpinnings of on-time delivery, and that plays to this idea that in Agile PM we turn the traditional triangle where the scope of the features we're going to deliver tends to be fixed, and what needs to vary to accommodate change is typically change in the time it takes us and what it's going to cost us to deliver that overall solution. We turn that on its head, and in Agile PM, we fix the time and the cost, and we seek to vary the scope of the features that are delivered as part of our solution in order to protect time and budget. And we do that using a technique called Moscow prioritization. Moscow segments the requirements, the features that we want to deliver within our solution into things we must have, should have, could have, and won't have this time. A must-have feature is defined by if we can't fulfill that, if we can't deliver that to that requirement, there's no point in delivering anything, because the solution will be illegal or unsafe, or it just won't work without that single thing being delivered. That's what defines a must-have. So nothing to do really with business value, except to say the business value in the context of the project is infinite, because if that isn't delivered, we have nothing. So from that point of view, it is an enabler for all the other elements of value, which tend to be embraced mainly by the should-haves. The should-haves are things that individually are important but not vital. It might be painful to lead out of the solution, but the solution will still be viable without it. And that might mean workarounds or something like that that's going to plug the gap that is being left out by having to descope one or more features, one or more of our should-haves. And we finally have could-haves. These are the things that we'd like. They're desirable, but they're less important. If they don't get delivered, the impact is low. People might not notice, let alone be particularly bothered by it. So less impact than a should have. And the things that we won't have this time are things that we're deliberately ruling out of scope for this delivery. They might come into play in a future delivery, however. And we balance the effort associated with that in order to be able to fix time and cost. So we guarantee delivery provided no more than 60% of the project effort is associated with must-have requirements. If we've got only 60% associated with must-have requirements, we've got 40% to cover everything else, effectively contingency protecting the must-have requirements. And we try and reserve around 20% of the effort to be could-have requirements, those things that people won't really notice too much if they're not there. So could-have requirements are our true contingency for the project. And we would expect to deliver the must-haves and the should-haves associated with our project, provided we have that contingency of about 20% of the effort in could-haves. The should-haves can't be absolutely guaranteed, because we don't know what the impact of VUCA is going to be on our project. The must-haves can be guaranteed as far as it is possible to do that, because we've got so much contingency wrapped up in the shoulds and the coulds. So the last slide is how that plays to a business case. So in the business case for our project, the costs will be the costs needed to deliver all the musts, all the shoulds, and all the coulds. And we suggest relating the benefit in our business case to the musts and the shoulds. So we expect to deliver the musts and the shoulds, so that should be our business case. The benefit should come from those features in the solution. If for some reason we can't deliver one or two or three of the should-haves, then that will compromise the business case a little, but we'll be reducing the value a little. Yeah, so same sort of idea. Our business case will be knocked out of balance in the same way as it would if we had to extend the time and the cost. So we're not making any pretenses there. It will imbalance the business case. But what we always have is we have delivered the solution on time and on budget. And if we now want to revisit those should haves, it is a choice. It's a business choice about whether we go back and complete those features that still have value. So that was a whistle through the agility in project management. Got a few minutes left. I'll be happy to take questions, and if some of those questions are better dealt with by Richard or even Peter, then they can chip in and answer too.
Thanks, Andrew. We already have quite some questions and some very interesting ones. Thanks. And perhaps you want to signal where people can find more information before we jump into the questions.
Yes, indeed. Depending on how you wanted to go down this, we have the two handbooks that were on the slide. Where is it? These two handbooks. So we've got the Agile PM handbook and the Agile PM for Scrum handbook are available from the Agile Business Consortium website. Getting into the detail of that. And some of what I said, or a lot of what I said earlier than that, you'll find in the Agile PM for Scrum handbook also.
So there's two questions from rather at the beginning of your presentation regarding decisions. So one from Enrico: when decisions are taken later rather than sooner, but just in time, what does it say about risk appetite or risk tolerance?
So that's a really interesting question, and actually plays to what we said in Agile PM for Scrum. Actually, that if you think about where risk comes from, risk tends to emerge from that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So if you have a project approach that is designed to deal with that, you've got a project approach that is inherently designed to deal with risk. So actually, leaving decisions till later is almost less risky. If you're using an agile approach, less risky than more risky, rather than more risky, which it would be if you were trying to plan all elements of your jigsaw up front.
Mm-hmm. And one other question on that: do you have examples of product developments with last responsible moment interventions?
Again, it really, I mean, my experience is around using agility in project management. I came to that very early on in 1997 when I worked for British Airways. That was introduced into DSTM was introduced into British Airways and had a massive transformational impact compared to the sort of rigid waterfall type approach we were using prior to that. And the very first project that I ran delivered on time and on budget. That's the original time frame and the original budget. And the sponsor and visionary for my project was wrote to my boss and my boss's boss and said, "This DSTM thing's fantastic. I want to use it on every project in my area moving forward." And I asked him afterwards, "So why was that, Pete? Why were you so happy? Because we only delivered about 70% of what you wanted. Why are you so happy?" He said, "Yeah, but," he said, "you delivered something." First time, his exact words were, "It's the first time you lot," meaning the IT department, "have ever delivered me anything on time and on budget, and I've been working in projects for nearly 20 years. That was what he said. "This is the very first time that that's ever happened." We made decisions around what we were going to de-scope, what we were going to leave out on a month-to-month basis, because we were running 1 month sprints back then, 1 month time boxes. On a month-to-month basis, we were making decisions based on what we had achieved predicting what we were going to have to leave out from the overall solution. And I was able to make those decisions incrementally as we went along. That allowed me to balance the most valuable things that I perceived right now compared to the most valuable things I perceived at the beginning of the project. So that story really emphasizes how much the business can value this late decision making also. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Not going to do one at a time. Not taking Vladimir's question. What are the benefits of taking feasibility, deployment, and post-deployment outside of the Scrum?
So what basically when you read the Scrum guide and you read the Scrum process, Scrum itself starts with taking the most important things off the product backlog and pulling them into a sprint for the team to work on. Yeah. Where does that product backlog come from? Yeah, that needs to be created in reality. That needs to be created and crafted, evolved with the input of stakeholders and all of that sort of good stuff. Scrum doesn't talk about that. So that's an element of foundations that is required before you actually get into building your solution in teams using something like Scrum. And we also need to think, as I said before, wider than just the thing that the Scrum team is delivering, which might be software or it might be a toy for Christmas or whatever it might be. We need to make sure that we've got all the other things considered. And again, the foundations phase allows us to do that and is not something that is the focus of Scrum at all either. In terms of deployment, if you can just deploy the product into live use and there are no other considerations, then you should do that. Yeah, and Scrum would love you to do that. But if you've got to bring together the latest version of a system with the latest version of working practices, with training for those working practices and all of that sort of thing, that is another reason, something else that is outside the realms of Scrum that needs to be dealt with when we're talking about deployment and so on.
Next question I choose is response to change. Our company has always been flexible in responding to change. However, growing from a few dozens to almost 300, we start to finally see how much changes on the project's cost on several projects. This leads us in a more rigid way of working on the projects. What would be, in your opinion, better way how to balance the cost of change versus the way to stay flexible on projects?
So for me, this boils down primarily to leadership. And in that sort of example, the leadership from a business visionary. One of the problems, I've absolutely no idea about your organization, but what I've seen in other organizations I've worked with is this notion that the business visionary can come up with a vision and then communicate that vision and almost throw the execution over to the project team and then not really have much to do with it. Now, a lot of it is going to involve continual engagement of the business visionary, and the business visionary needs to be making the judgment call on whether this change is genuinely going to add value to the overall business case proposition and so on. And if it is, then that change should be accepted regardless almost of cost, because if the cost effectiveness of that change makes sense, then that's great. If the business visionary looks at it and says, well, I can't really justify that change in terms of the overall value to the project, then that wouldn't be included. So control of that should be down to business leadership of the project primarily, rather than trying to guess everything up front. That needs to be dynamic.
I am aware we're now running out of time, so there's a couple of questions that we will answer afterwards, probably using just typing in some of the answers. And you can always contact either me or Andrew or Richard to come up with more questions and answers. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Andrew and Richard, for being with us and sharing this with us. And I hope that the IPMA community will learn a lot from this and will start embracing more business agility. Just as a reminder for everyone, after this, you will be getting a questionnaire on how you value this one. If you want to become more into special interest groups, either this one or other special interest groups or IPMA, you can just go to the IPMA website I hope you enjoyed this one just before Christmas, sort of, and hope to see you on the other side of Christmas with more interesting stuff on business agility. And a sneak preview, I think there might be an agility work stream in the next conference, which is up in November in Cape Town. And Sam, who's usually organizing this SIG, is currently actually in Cape Town, talking to the mayor of Cape Town and making sure that that is going to go ahead. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. We'll be staying on here to answer some of the questions, and I'll let you go with this. Thank you very much.